Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today we're embarking on, well, it's an incredible journey, really, through the transformative power of Black music and culture. We're talking centuries and continents here. We're going to explore how sound, how rhythm, uh, artistic expression, how they've not just entertained us, but profoundly shaped history, fueled solidarity, and even offered some deep philosophical insights into, the human condition.
Indeed, and we'll be exploring a really rich tapestry of sources today. Everything from academic texts on Pan-Africanism and ethnomusicology to critical analyses of blues and jazz, and even historical accounts of key figures and movements. Our mission really is to uncover the surprising, often overlooked connections and, well, the enduring legacies that reveal music as this immensely powerful force for social change, collective identity, and deep cultural memory.
Right. Think of it maybe as a shortcut to understanding just how deeply intertwined music is with our past, our present, and our future. Hopefully offering those aha moments about how something that seems so simple, like a rhythm or a melody, can actually carry profound meaning and even ignite movements. What really stands out to me as we look through this material is just how resilient, how innovative, and frankly, how utterly vital human expression can be, especially when facing immense challenges.
Absolutely. It is quite remarkable.
So let's get started. #tag the enduring power of Pan-African solidarity through music. Okay, so let's try and unpack this first bit. One might reasonably question, how relevant is Pan-Africanist solidarity today? The story we often hear is that its greatest impact, its most effective period, was during the 20th century struggles against colonialism, apartheid, legal discrimination, that sort of thing. And once those overt systems were officially dismantled, did that powerful political energy just fade away? It's easy to look back and think, okay, that struggle was for that time, and once the obvious barriers fell, maybe the need for those unified movements just wasn't there anymore, or even became, obsolete.
Yeah, that's definitely a common perception. I hear that a lot. But it critically misses a crucial point, I think. While those overt institutionalized systems like colonialism and apartheid were dismantled, and that was a monumental achievement, no question,
Yeah.
they often didn't just disappear completely. Instead, they morphed. They adapted into new, maybe more insidious forms like multinational capitalist exploitation, neo-imperialism, and often internal corruption that kept hindering real liberation and progress.
So things like global economic structures still favoring former colonial powers, persistent debt burdens, resource extraction that benefits outsiders.
Exactly, all of that. And it's precisely because these new, often less visible challenges are so acute, so pervasive, that renewed perspectives on liberation movements and solidarity aren't just relevant, they're urgently needed. Our sources strongly suggest that if we really understood the history of what they call small Pan-Africanism, the kind that unfolded more organically, in cultural arenas, places often dismissed as just leisure or entertainment, music, dance, storytelling. If we understood that history, we'd recognize its entelechy.
Entelechy, okay, that's a term. What exactly does that mean in this context?
It describes like an inherent self-actualizing potential, a kind of renewable energy that's always there, waiting to be tapped by social movements, old and new.
Ah, I see. So it's not just a historical relic.
Not at all. It's a living, evolving force, deeply embedded in cultural expression, ready to be re-energized when new challenges pop up.
Could you maybe give us an example where we've seen this entelechy clearly in action, how a cultural form from one era maybe directly inspired or fueled a movement later on? That helps me grasp it.
Absolutely, and it's a really powerful illustration. Think about the enduring legacy of African-American spirituals. These songs, born from the, unspeakable suffering of slavery, they contain these profound messages of hope, resilience, liberation, often coded in religious language, right?
Right, foundational cultural texts.
Exactly. Then, decades, even a century later, during the mid-20th century civil rights movement, these very same spirituals weren't just sung for historical appreciation. No, they're consciously re-employed, re-energized as anthems of protest, of solidarity, of spiritual sustenance.
You shall overcome this little light of mine.
Precisely. Activists marching for freedom sang those songs, consciously tapping into that deep wellspring of historical resilience and collective memory embedded right there in the melodies and lyrics. The rhythms, the messages of defiance that were maybe subtle earlier, now became explicit calls for action. That's a perfect example of how the entelechy of a cultural form, its inherent potential, was practically tapped by a social movement. It provided not just morale, but a shared historical consciousness, a blueprint for unity against immense oppression.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting for me. This concept of stereomodernism. The idea uses the principle of a stereophonic sound system, right?
What?
Where tiny time delays create this effect of depth from just two channels.
Right, mimicking how our ears perceive direction and space.
And it's used as a metaphor, a powerful one, for how diaspora articulates the global Black presence, both connecting and expressing difference within unity. It's like listening to complex music in stereo. You get this profound sense of space, individual instruments in distinct places, but all contributing to a unified, rich, multifaceted whole.
Exactly, from just those slight variations between left and right.
And stereomodernism applies this to the diaspora, distinct experiences, cultures, identities across regions, those slight differences, still contributing to a unified, rich, global Black presence.
Precisely. It's about recognizing commonalities without erasing unique identities.
And this sense of listening, especially deep listening, opening up other sensory channels. That resonates here too.
Profoundly. Stereomodernism suggests music activates not just hearing, but other senses, tactile, emotional. It really reminds us how artificial it is to think each sense is totally separate.
Like Stephen Connor suggests, it's about plurality, not erasing difference, even in an immersive sound experience.
Exactly. You might think an overwhelming sound would homogenize perception, but instead it allows for a richer, more layered understanding. It embraces varied perspectives, acknowledges the unique position of each listener.
So connecting this to the bigger picture, it really highlights how culture is a primary site for articulating these complex identities.
Absolutely. It's where shared heritage and individual experience can coexist, interact, and enrich each other, moving way beyond a single monolithic identity.
Okay, so what does this actually mean for how solidarity was built? On the ground, across time and space. We see this playing out vividly in, say, early 20th century South Africa. Black intellectuals back then faced this daunting double challenge: colonized modernity, living under colonial rule, while grappling with a modernizing world and racial expropriation.
Meaning they weren't just dealing with abstract oppression, they were literally losing land, economic autonomy, basic human rights.
Right. And in response, they reimagined their vibrant oral vernacular forms into print,
In newspapers, novels, musical scores, transcribed lyrics.
imbuing print culture with the oral sensibilities of a self-consciously inventive Black modernism.
It wasn't just translating speech to paper. It was transforming cultural expression itself to meet urgent political and social needs, actively constructing a modern Black identity.
So for them, cultural production was strategic.
Multifaceted and highly strategic.
Yes.
First, it was a means to demonstrate their sophistication, their intellect, their cultural heritage, which then served as crucial grounds for demanding full human rights in a world denying them.
And second,
Second, and just as important, it was a powerful tool to raise collective consciousness, to galvanize concrete political action. They used musical transcription as both a practical technique and a potent metaphor.
taking spoken nuances, song inflections, storytelling rhythms, and finding ways to represent them on the page.
Exactly, making oral traditions accessible to a broader literate audience, locally and internationally, and preserving them. It was a conscious effort to codify and spread their unique cultural heritage, transforming sounds into enduring texts.
And what's striking is this wasn't happening in isolation, was it?
Not at all. They were deeply inspired by other Black nationalities facing similar urgencies across the globe, even actively mining African-American music for content, performance strategies, artistic innovation as early stereomodernists.
A conscious transnational exchange, a shared struggle, a shared artistic vision.
Precisely. And a fantastic example of this in action is the remarkable figure of Charlotte Manie Maxey.
Yes. Tell us about her.
Well, Maxey made her debut as a solo contralto in 1890, a pivotal moment. It was barely 2 months after Orpheus McAdoo's Virginia Jubilee Singers first arrived in Cape Town. At the Jubilee Singers' performances, they had this immediate, profound impact, inspiring local Black elite choirs to enthusiastically adopt African-American spirituals.
Wow, that fast. Shows the power of that diasporic exchange.
Absolutely. Maxey quickly formed her own group, the African Jubilee Singers. And what's truly remarkable is they even planned a tour to Britain, not just for fame, but with the explicit goal of raising £10,000, a huge sum then, for technical schools in South Africa.
So cultural performance directly fueling political and social development, using art for concrete community uplift.
Exactly. Her life truly embodies stereomodernism and leaves this indelible imprint of transnational Black feminist solidarity. Through her music, her writing, her political work, she wasn't just a performer, she was a tireless activist, a community builder, a sharp social critic.
She delivered some trenchant critiques too, didn't she?
Oh, yes, like her powerful argument that rent regulations, forcing Black women to consort with men for lodging,
Hmm.
that it harmed Bantu society by pushing wedded womanhood onto the downward path of sin and crime.
Showing how her cultural and political work were deeply intertwined, addressing systemic oppression and its intimate social fallout.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to a crucial point. How did these cultural acts, the music, the art, translate directly into political solidarity and social change?
Well, music served an absolutely essential function, gathering people, raising morale, sustaining the spirit of activists in often dire circumstances.
Can you give examples?
Sure. Think about the impact of performances of Afro-British composer Samuel Coleridge Taylor's music at the seminal 1900 Pan-African Conference.
Oh.
Or consider Ruth Bucknall's powerful soprano solos at PSA Brotherhood gatherings. Pleasant Sunday afternoon brotherhoods. They were non-denominational working-class associations, sometimes important spaces for early social and political organizing in Black communities. These musical events provided a vital platform for women to lead in social action, even with the gender contradictions that existed in some movements.
So definitely not just background entertainment.
Not at all. It was a profound form of mobilization, creating a shared emotional, intellectual space where people could connect, draw strength, and organize for collective action.
A way to bypass formal political restrictions, building community through shared aesthetic experience.
Exactly. Unified purpose. Hashtag, tag, the transformative journey of Black music across the diaspora.
Okay, so we've established music as this powerful force for solidarity, a crucial tool for political action. But how did these practices, these sounds, actually travel, transform, endure across oceans and generations?
Well, the sources consistently point to dance, drum, and song as the baseline for the entire Afro-American tradition. This core cultural complex carried across the horrors of the Middle Passage and then brilliantly adapted to new realities in the Americas.
Despite the brutality, the attempts to strip people of their culture, the essence endured, reshaping, reemerging.
Yes, and even when African drums were explicitly prohibited because colonizers recognized their power for communication, for unity,
Right.
their rhythmic essence survived through ingenious acts of synchronization with European musical elements.
Not a loss, but a profound act of cultural resilience, powerful adaptation.
Exactly. Finding new, innovative expressions in new contexts.
And the ring shout is a key example of this.
Arguably the most powerful illustration of this survival and adaptation. Yes, it was the main context in which transplanted Africans recognized values common to them, a vital space for cultural affirmation, continuity.
A communal ritual fusing sacred and secular, music and dance.
Often incorporating trance, ecstatic worship. And critically, the ring shout preserved the foundational elements of African American music. It directly gave rise to its distinctive rhythms from the shuffling, angular, offbeat, additive, repetitive, intensive, unflagging rhythms.
That became hallmarks of spirituals, ragtime, R&B.
Right, to the less vigorous but equally insistent rhythms of the profound sorrow songs and the blues.
So the ring shout was this dynamic, living act of resistance and cultural preservation.
Ensuring that the rhythmic DNA, the expressive vocabulary of African music, kept beating strong in the diaspora. It was a space where cultural memory was actively performed, kept alive.
What's fascinating here is how the physical movements, the dancers, the musicians, their physical play, the gestures, how they hold their bodies, interplay with instruments, become crucial material signifiers. It's not just the notes or the sounds in the air, it's how they're played or danced. The embodied expression, the kinetic energy carries meaning.
Exactly. This highlights that profound concept of signifying.
Right. Henry Louis Gates Jr.'s term, but applied to music here.
Yes, where the how of a performance often becomes more important, more communicative than the what. It's a sophisticated form of musical troping, rhetorical play, bodily assertion, commenting on asserting, subtly mocking an idea through repetition with difference, or ironic shifts.
Like in the blues, the consistently descending phrases, pendular thirds, the worried notes, the moaning delivery.
Those are all signifying symbols, not random choices, deliberate statements, coded expressions of experience, emotion, resistance.
So connecting this to the bigger picture, it reveals how cultural memory is actively maintained, perpetuated through these dynamic embodied practices.
Precisely. And what's critical, too, is that this memory is not racially exclusive. Absorbing the elements of the music also means absorbing its cultural memory, its methods of signifying, allows for broader participation, understanding, while still honoring its deep roots.
So if these physical movements, these embodied expressions, are material signifiers, and it's captured in signifying, how does this subtle nonverbal communication allow music to become such a powerful conduit of Black transnational feeling across distances, generations? It's almost like a hidden language, isn't it?
That's a powerful way to put it, a hidden language. The sheer acoustic properties of historical sites related to the slave trade underscore this.
Yeah.
Think about the diaspora acoustics of Cape Coast and Elmina castles in Ghana.
Not just forts, but whispering galleries.
Exactly. Places where what was said, heard in those dark, oppressive chambers, resonated with disproportionate clarity, amplitude. This is powerfully evoked in Roberta Flack's singing in the dungeons. Imagine the weight of history in those walls, amplifying her voice, the raw emotion. Contemporary sound interacting with echoes of ancestral suffering.
Wow.
Similarly, Maya Angelou's poignant account of her time in Ghana, overcoming despair by imagining herself in the place of her ancestors, almost hearing the old ones chuckling.
It illustrates how an imagined acoustic scene, deep listening across time, bridges generations to form solidarity.
Exactly. Testament to the power of memory, empathy, imagination.
And it's not just historical sites. Poet Kirapetsi Kagusitsile uses diasporic music to link geographically separate Topoi
Recurring themes, archetypes.
in a historically distinct times, projecting a performance of simultaneity.
His rewriting of "Were you there when they crucified my Lord?" to "Were you there when they killed Lumumba? Were you there when they killed Brother Malcolm?" Brilliant.
Reroutes devotional energy to the political, transforms a sacred question into an urgent contemporary one, using that practice of worrying the line.
Right. Manipulating a phrase for new meaning shows how existing forms can be reemployed to address contemporary realities, making the sacred serve a new, urgent, secular purpose.
And his colleague, Kofi Inyitaho,
Engages in similar echo writing in poems like Ancestral Logic and Caribbean Blues, tracing paths for solidarity along modern air routes through Black urban centers, while critiquing how colonial powers still shape trade, economic disparities long after independence.
So it's not just reflecting, but actively shaping and critiquing geopolitical realities.
Exactly. A form of sophisticated commentary, intellectual and emotional resistance, revealing ongoing struggles, fostering renewed solidarity.
And beyond land and air routes, there was this vital, often overlooked, Black seafaring tradition.
African mariners as linguists, pilots, surfmen, mediating between Africans and Europeans in trade.
And in the New World, Black West Indian mariners, often multilingual, mixing with runaways.
Giving them unique access to Black and white worlds beyond their shores, creating this invaluable informal network.
Contributing to diasporic consciousness, spreading Black's news, subversive and otherwise.
An effective conduit for information, resistance ideas, cultural forms. And remember, Black musicians were even impressed into Royal Navy service, often put in the limelight as drummers, violinists for entertainment.
Shows their talent, their pervasive presence, even in forced circumstances.
Absolutely. This mobile community was a crucial, often overlooked vector for cultural exchange. We also see specific musical patterns traveling, like the pervasive Shinkur-Tresillo complex.
These intricate rhythms?
Usually blended in a rich, multi-layered, rhythmic callaloo, defining the aesthetic character of a large part of the African diaspora.
Derived from West African timeline patterns, appearing as ostinato.
A continually repeated phrase or rhythm.
In everything from Cuban contradanza and danzón, habanera, tango, merengue, calypso, Puerto Rican danza.
Showing deep, undeniable connections rooted in shared African heritage. This rhythmic fingerprint moving across oceans, cultures, profound testament to the enduring influence and adaptability of African musical traditions.
And these influences extend even to contemporary celebrations like Junkanoo in the Bahamas, Belize, Jamaica.
Yes. Originally a Christmas festival, rooted in African traditions, now a primary cultural marker, national identity expression. Traditionally uses goatskin drums, cowbells, whistles, but recently incorporated seal drums, connecting with Trinidadian sound.
A living example of how these rhythms evolve,
Yeah.
incorporating new elements while retaining core identity, historical lineage,
Yeah.
dynamic living forms.
Exactly. Not static museum pieces. They constantly adapt and renew themselves. Hashtag music as philosophy and social commentary.
Okay, switching gears just a bit, let's dive into a really fascinating puzzle from the sources, one that speaks to the very soul of music. The idea that spirituals and gospel music are spiritually at odds with the blues and rock and roll, often labeled the devil's music.
That old tension.
What does it even mean for musical styles to be spiritually incompatible, especially when they're so closely related, drawing from the same cultural wellspring? And can music truly have spiritually therapeutic or conversely toxic effects on people or communities?
It's not just aesthetic taste, is it? For many, it's a deeply held belief about the moral, spiritual implications of sound, its power to shape character, destiny.
Definitely takes us into deep philosophical waters.
It does. Challenges us to consider how music works on the soul, individually and collectively. A prime example, maybe the most vivid, is that enduring legend of the Delta bluesman Robert Johnson.
Ah, the crossroads.
Exactly. Supposedly made a midnight deal with the devil at a crossroads in Mississippi, traded his soul for his haunting, unparalleled guitar technique.
That legend isn't just a colorful story, is it?
No, it reflects a profound tension between sacred and secular, salvation and earthly struggle, divine inspiration and demonic pacts, right at the heart of the Black experience in the American South. It captures deep ambivalence, moral dilemmas.
The Robert Johnson crossroads legend, it's so persistent, the sources offer interpretations, right? Simple superstition. Sour grapes from Sunhouse.
Right, implying resentment that Johnson copied his licks and got more posthumous fame.
Or the more mundane and plausible idea that Johnson just woodshedded, practiced intensely in isolation in Hazelhurst for 2 years, returning with shocking new skills.
Diligent practice.
But what do you think is the most profound message that myth conveys? Regardless of literal truth, universal human struggle, or something more specific to that time and place.
That really is the crux of it. Recent scholarship often argues it's largely an urban legend, fabricated later by enthusiasts romanticizing the blues, saying less about its hero than about the culture that perpetuates it. Like the film Crossroads projecting the devil myth onto heavy metal, a cultural projection.
Okay.
But for me, and I think for many who engage deeply with the blues, Joel Rudenau's argument, taking it seriously on moral, spiritual, and theological terms, is far more compelling.
Why is that?
He argues it captures the fundamental agonizing struggles of human life, the compromises we make, temptations we face, deep despair, the desire for transcendence, regardless of background. It externalizes that internal battle between flesh and spirit, good and evil, a perennial human experience.
So the myth, true or not, conveys profound cultural meaning by articulating shared anxieties, desires, a narrative framework for understanding suffering.
Exactly, seeking escape or expression through that narrative.
It's a great point. And it speaks to the nature of the blues itself. Unlike the collective, communal singing of spirituals, the blues is often described as intensely personal and individualistic, representing a dark night of the soul. How does this deeply individual expression fit into the broader philosophical understanding of music's emotional power? Is there a collective experience of individual despair? Or does it serve a different, maybe more cathartic function for the listener?
Well, historically, philosophers have grappled with this for millennia.
Right.
Plato believed music profoundly influenced the soul's emotional life, right? Different modes having distinct emotional signatures, arousing sympathy.
Right, and the Pythagoreans codified harmonic relationships, octave, fifth, fourth, thirds, as mathematically simple, universally appealing, suggesting an inherent order to musical beauty.
Yes. Even a skeptic like Edward Hanslick, critical of extravagant claims about music's direct emotive powers, still discussed music in emotional terms. More recently, Stephen Keevy theorizes music is emotionally expressive because it resembles other vocal or behavioral expressions of emotion.
So sad music sounds like a sad voice or demeanor, eliciting a sympathetic response.
Pretty much. So while the blues might express individual despair, its very expression, its sounding like despair, resonates with shared human experience, creates a collective catharsis for listeners who felt similar things.
What's truly fascinating, though, is how this goes beyond simple math or mimicry. Philosophers like John Dewey and Suzanne Langer understood rhythm in fundamental biological terms. All of life is rhythmic.
Right. Not just equal time divisions, that simplistic meter, but the dynamic interplay of oscillating tensions, an energy exchange.
Where resolving one tension gives rise to another, like breathing.
Exactly like breathing. The build-up, release, build-up. This continuous dynamic process of tension and release, this oscillation, is the essence of rhythm, fundamental to life, not just music.
And this biological understanding leads directly to the groove in funk. Like James Brown's "Get Up, I Feel Like Being a Sex Machine."
Absolutely. A groove requires repetition, creates a strong expectation the intricate rhythmic interplay will continue, compels you to move. Our willingness to stay in the groove is a direct function of how interesting, infectious, danceable, and fun it is. It's deeply participatory and embodied response.
Which is why, when an audience claps on the 1 and 3 and rock and roll instead of the backbeat,
The backbeat emphasizing 2 and 4, giving it that characteristic swing and drive.
it demonstrates an ignorance of rhythmic conventions and profoundly undermines the groove.
It feels some aesthetically wrong. It feels incorrect in the body, disrupts the natural pulse. Clapping on 1 and 3 is more like a march, a waltz. It completely clashes.
Pulls you out of the kinetic, embodied experience.
Exactly. Highlights the crucial importance of embodied understanding. Music isn't just heard, it's felt, physically engaged with, and there are culturally specific, ingrained ways to engage that enhance or detract.
This leads us to that fascinating, often contentious question. Who can truly play the blues? Can white people play the blues? Debate. Gleason, Baraka, brings up the experiential access argument.
If you don't live it, it won't come out of your horn, attributed to Charlie Parker.
Suggesting authentic blues needs lived experience of suffering, oppression, specific cultural context, something white musicians can't replicate because they haven't lived that specific racial history.
Well, it's a nuanced point. Parker himself, in full context, also famously repudiated limitations applied to art, including race-based ones, suggesting true art should transcend such boundaries.
Interesting.
While singing other genres might be like acting, requiring credible simulation, you don't need to be an Ethiopian princess to sing Idia convincingly. The blues and gospel impose different, more profound requirements. It's essential to put yourself into the performance, to really mean it.
Drawing on a deep internal wellspring of experience, emotion.
Exactly. It's about a deeper authenticity beyond technique or imitation, an internal resonance with the lived experience, a profound commitment to the emotion, the meaning behind the notes, whether or not one has had the exact same life experience.
So, genuine empathy, a profound internal connection to the human condition the music expresses.
That's how I read it, yes.
So, if that's blues and gospel, what about the broader cultural context of art? Western societies often view art as something specific, removed from everyday life, contemplated in concert halls, museums.
Right, placed on a pedestal, separate from the mundane, demanding reverent, detached attention.
Whereas in many African societies, art forms aren't easily separated from their immediate social, practical context.
Exactly. Music particularly is deeply integrated into daily life, social action. Sources mention musicians being paid to compose songs for courtship, or even for delivering crafted insults, social commentary, conflict resolution.
Wow.
Men work in fields making music, labor synchronized by song. Canoe paddlers sing different songs depending on the current, affecting efficiency, morale.
Demonstrates a pervading sense of formality and civility, where people consciously build complexity and complications into their relationships through music, using it as a sophisticated tool for social navigation.
Right. Not an isolated aesthetic experience. It's functional, integral to social interaction, daily existence, reflects a fundamentally different worldview on art's role and purpose.
That makes so much sense. Less passive appreciation, more active engagement. Music serving a tangible purpose. And we see that directly in the talking drums. They're not just percussion, but communication, a language.
Exactly. In Ewe and Dagamba traditions, among others, drums communicate through specific strikes, pitches, rhythmic patterns mimicking the inflections, tonal shifts of the adult male speaking voice, often using onomatopoeic syllables for words.
Audible.
The most important aspects of improvisation in African idioms are repetition and subtle change. The drummer isn't just playing a static rhythm, they're actively talking, responding to the moment, other musicians, dancers.
And a good rhythm enhances itself not by dominating, but by filling gaps, leaving room, especially for dancers.
Precisely. The drummer will drum according to that dancer's movements, creating this direct, responsive, dynamic interplay between musician and movement. One inspires and informs the other in real time.
A continuous flowing conversation between sound and motion.
Yes, a complete sensory and communicative loop.
Okay, shifting focus now to the 20th century. We arrive at this incredibly vibrant, transformative era of Afro-modernism, roughly, 1940s through the 60s,
Around then, yes, a critical period.
where Black musicians, composers, artists refused to limit themselves, breaking rules, restrictions imposed by mainstream society, asserting artistic autonomy with unprecedented force.
It was a true flowering of creativity, a dynamic explosion of innovation that reshaped not just Black music, but the entire global musical landscape.
And this explosion was energized by a sense of freedom.
Profoundly energized by a potent sense of freedom, echoing the revolutionary spirit of figures like Toussaint Louverture, leader of the Haitian Revolution. Musicians explored new tonalities, invented entirely new styles, think bebop, for instance,
Right.
and seized unprecedented opportunities through international travel, higher education, the burgeoning field of Black music research. They truly saw themselves and were increasingly seen by others as agents of change, using their art to push social, political boundaries, to articulate new identities, create a new, distinct sound for a new era of self-determination.
Let's meet some of these remarkable figures who exemplified this audacious spirit, pushed the boundaries of sound, like George Bridgetower, born around 1779.
Yes, George Bridgetower, an astonishing figure, a child prodigy, acclaimed across Europe as a fine violin player by age 10, even studied with Haydn.
At just 15, he was first violinist of the Prince's Private Orchestra in England, recognized at the highest levels of European classical society, challenging prejudice.
Absolutely, and his most pivotal moment, 1803, when Ludwig van Beethoven composed his monumental sonata for violin and piano, number 9 in a major, opus 47.
Later known as the Kreutzer Sonata.
Specifically for Bridgetower, the original inscription, Sonata Mulatica Composta per Mulatto Bridgetower, a direct acknowledgement of his mixed heritage.
4. The silly quarrel about a girl led to the rededication.
So the legend goes, Bridgetower continued his distinguished career, got a degree from Cambridge in 1811, recognized as a composer too, demonstrated an elaborate and rich talent, not just a performer.
You're mentioned alongside other significant Afro-descendant classical musicians like Chevalier de Saint-Georges, highlights this remarkable, often overlooked lineage.
Exactly, integral to the European musical tradition.
Moving into the 20th century, Dorothy Rudd Moore, an innovative, powerful figure in African-American classical music.
Yes, and notably, she didn't hold a traditional university position, yet made an incredibly significant mark through sheer dedication, formidable artistic vision.
And she consciously chose not to label her output explicitly as Black music.
Right. Believing it could ghettoize her work, confine it from the larger art world, implying it might be seen as niche, not universal. Yet simultaneously, she deeply understood and embraced the African-American experience as broad, complex, all-encompassing, informing her voice without overtly defining it.
So she rarely used traditional African-American musical materials literally, preferred more abstract gestures, forms.
Yes, and earned a reputation for music with profound communicative power, integrity, intelligence, and impeccable craft.
Challenging the notion that Black artists must always explicitly represent race to be authentic or significant.
Absolutely, demonstrating the universality and emotional depth inherent in their unique perspective.
And then there's George Russell, a true giant in jazz theory, groundbreaking work, influenced generations.
A towering figure in Afro-modernism, composer, theorist, published his seminal Lydian chromatic concept of tonal organization in 1953.
Hugely impactful in jazz harmony improvisation, offered a new framework for scales modes.
Yes, initially conceived for jazz improvisers, but he later believed it had universal potential beyond the American jazz world. Even sought to analyze Bach's Stravinsky through its lens.
Inspired by bebop's emphasis on the flatted fifth.
Deeply inspired. Shows how specific musical innovations, often from intense cultural pressure, creative urgency, can lead to broader, universally applicable theoretical frameworks.
Speaking of bebop, can't forget Bud Powell.
Oh, absolutely. Bud Powell, a true genius of the piano. His harmonic rhythmic innovations laid the groundwork for countless jazz pianists.
And Max Roach.
Incredibly influential drummer, composer, band leader, famously used his art not just for musical expression, but to reflect cultural heritage, directly challenge social injustices, both absolutely foundational to Afro-modernism.
And Thelonious Monk.
Ah, Monk. The utterly iconoclastic bebop genius, instantly recognizable. His off-center rhythms and sour notes.
Deliberately exploiting melodic, harmonic dissonance. Shocking yet deeply expressive.
In Monk's playing, his compositions, almost every event is unexpected, challenging conventional melody, harmony, like Isu, the African trickster god of irony.
Whose unpredictable nature embodies the crossroads of choice, paradox.
Exactly. Highlights that profound connection between cultural mythology and artistic expression, where the unexpected, dissonant, ironic aren't flaws, but intentional, deeply resonant artistic choices conveying complex truths.
Miles Davis, another titan, also profoundly embodies this Afro-modernist spirit, particularly his evolution.
Remarkable evolution. From his cool school jazz, which initially, ironically, rejected overt blues inflections, leaned more European classical.
To his later work incorporating collective improvisation, rock elements, constantly reinventing himself, and jazz itself.
Davis's later approach brought a more primeval ensemble sound, recalling collective improvisation, layered textures of African ensemble music, the raw power of the shout.
Playing on the verges, exploring liminal spaces, crossroads where African-American and European myth, ritual meet, fuse.
Reveling in the merging of contrasting approaches and sounds. His collaborations with Gil Evans, like Porgy and Bess. His integration of rock rhythms, electric instruments, like in 81.
Solidified his place as a pioneer who refused confinement by genre, expectation, any single tradition.
Absolutely.
And this innovation extended powerfully to classical forms, too. William Grant Still's Afro-American Symphony, described as a long blues meditation in symphonic dress.
Uniquely blending American vernacular blues with sophisticated classical structures, proving they weren't mutually exclusive.
And even more radical experimentation, pushing the definition of composition.
Oh yes, like T.J. Anderson's Intermezzi from 1983, for clarinet, alto sax, piano. Employed this extraordinary orbiting process.
Orbiting.
Imagine three musicians playing together, but each has their own internal clock, their own tempo, loudness, pitch area, instructed by the score to ignore each other.
Wow, that sounds chaotic.
It creates this deliberately disjunct, almost chaotic sound at first. Yet somehow, through this intentional disunity, it still comes together as cohesive, compelling. Challenges our very notion of musical harmony or ensemble.
Organized chaos with artistic purpose.
Exactly. Similarly, Hale Smith's Inflections used African-derived elements not for imitation, but to express deep, complex states of stir, agitation, movement.
These composers, through their truly dialogical work, art engaging in conversation between traditions, ideas challenge conventional wisdom.
Right, challenging that African Americans cannot produce viable art without communicating the fact of their race, or that race-based art is limited.
Instead, demonstrating how combined symbolic force, a rich amalgamation of influences, can equal or surpass single traditions, achieving a new universal resonance.
Precisely. This is signifying revision at its finest, showing how cultural traditions can be deconstructed, recontextualized, reconstructed to create new, powerful artistic statements that transcend boundaries. #tag the digital future of African music and archiving.
Okay, as we bring our deep dive toward a close, it's important to ask, how does this incredibly rich history, cultural production, innovation, solidarity resonate today? In our contemporary, increasingly digital world, are these profound traditions still vital, evolving, or have they become, relics, historical footnotes in archives?
Far from being relics. The sources reveal this fascinating pirate logic, an ingenious spirit of hacking at play in recent African cultural productions, especially in the digital realm.
Hacking not in the malicious sense.
Yeah.
But creative subversion.
Exactly. Showcasing how unauthorized uses, clever alterations of existing cultural codes, technologies, can reprogram new possible outcomes. Creating entirely new forms of expression, dissemination. Applies not just to experimental writing, digital art, but also experimental reading, listening, viewing practices, inviting active audience participation. It's about repurposing, remixing, reimagining.
That sounds really dynamic, active. Can you give some concrete examples? How does this pirate logic show up?
Certainly. Consider two powerful Senegalese films. Ousmane Sembène's Camp de Tiroy from 87 and Moussa Senamsa's A Twist of Penguin from 93. Both feature pivotal scenes with analog mediums, gramophones, old Tepaz record players, deliberately signifying on.
In that rich, layered sense we discussed.
Popular African-American music. They demonstrate a kind of techno-nostalgia, a fondness for older tech. But they also profoundly expose the power of pirate archiving.
Pirate archiving.
Using, reusing, even playfully abusing these technologies, not just to produce new versions of the past, but fundamentally new pasts altogether. Playing back alternative, often subversive versions of history that challenge official narratives.
So even seemingly obsolete tech can be reimagined as powerful tools for rewriting narratives. challenging dominant historical accounts.
Exactly.
So how does this artistic hacking, this reimagining, connect to broader social movements or cultural shifts? Taps into a larger creative
It
impulse.
absolutely does. Connects directly to grassroots movements like the Senegalese Set Sebel movement in the 80s and 90s, emerged from urban youth, emphasized local self-determination, community cleanup, the incredible creativity of young people improvising with whatever resources they had.
Like making pitchos shadow puppets from cardboard, or
Pixar.
transforming walls with vibrant murals.
Exactly. This impulse mirrors the hacking of cultural archives, making do with what's available, repurposing it with ingenuity, creating something new, profoundly meaningful outside traditional structures, a powerful decentralized act of cultural self-determination, urban renewal.
And beyond cinema, street art, we see this mothership connection, this continuous lineage in other art forms
Oh,
too.
yes. John Hoffer's seminal 1987 film, The Last Angel of History, meticulously traces this mothership connection
Rooted in Afrofuturist visions like Sun Ra's.
between Africa and experimental diasporic music. From Sun Ra's cosmic jazz to George Clinton's psychedelic funk, shows a continuous evolving artistic lineage spanning genres, continents, even galaxies.
And Ken Bugle's 2005 novel, Rue Felix Farr, another angle.
A captivating one. The novel is suffused with Billie Holiday's blues, Cecilia Evora's Caperdine Mornis, effectively creating this rich, evocative soundtrack for the emergence of transnational feminist solidarity.
And the title itself, Rue Felix Farr, a common colonial street name, cleverly skewers the colonial past, while defining a home for non-conformist subjects of contemporary Dakar.
Precisely. A powerful reclaiming of space and narrative for marginalized voices, it highlights a crucial dynamic. How do artists continue to reclaim narratives, redefine spaces, foster new solidarity?
By weaving in sounds, histories, critiques, alternative perspectives that challenge dominant viewpoints, offering new, empowering ways to inhabit, understand their worlds.
Exactly that.
Perhaps the ultimate, most ambitious example of this, hacking into the future archive of solidarity, is the Heliocentric's ongoing internet radio project, the Pan-African Space Station.
It sounds truly ambitious, almost fantastical, forward-thinking. Perfectly encapsulates what we've been discussing.
It absolutely does. It's described as an exploration mission that has yet to dock,
Right.
suggesting a continuous, unfolding journey, not a fixed destination.
Exuberantly Pan-African in reach, connecting sounds, ideas across the continent, the diaspora, but importantly, anchored by a vibrant local music scene in Cape Town, demonstrating the power of the local to inform the global.
And its unique aesthetic. The 10-point Courier font, manuscript paper motifs, dotted lines like orbits.
Slyly underscores its promise. There are other worlds they never told you about. Worlds of ancient techno, future roots, sounds defying easy categorization. It operates in many ways like a pirate radio station. Rejects commercial slickness, emphasizes smallness, the choice of the body and hand drawings, embraces an organic DIY ethos.
A truly digital, decentralized hub for connecting diasporic sounds, ideas, communities, building solidarity through shared aesthetic, political vision, constantly evolving, exploring, creating new futures from reclaimed pasts.
Couldn't have said it better.
So what does this all mean for how we understand the ongoing creative legacy of Black music and solidarity?
It suggests a continuous dynamic process. Reinterpretation, reimagination, constant renewal, building vibrant new futures from deeply reclaimed pasts.
All powered by that inherent entelechy, that renewable energy we talked about at the start.
Exactly. It keeps regenerating. Hashtag outro.
Wow. What an incredible journey we've taken into the deep dive of Black music and its profound, multifaceted impact on solidarity, culture, even our fundamental understanding of art itself.
Quite a ride.
We've traced connections from early Pan-African movements, the resilience of the Middle Passage, through the philosophical underpinnings of rhythm, the human soul, all the way to contemporary digital archiving and the exciting future of sound.
We've seen how figures like the pioneering George Bridgetower, the activist performer Charlotte Massey, the theoretical genius George Russell, the endlessly innovative Miles Davis, how they exemplify the spirit of constant innovation, fearlessly pushing boundaries, challenging established norms.
Their work and the rich cultural traditions they represent offer powerful insights, don't they, into resilience, the ongoing construction of identity across the African diaspora, the enduring power of human creativity against immense challenge. So what does this all mean for you, the listener, as you navigate your own world? It's, I think, a powerful reminder that music is never just background noise, never merely entertainment.
Mm.
It's a vibrant, evolving dialogue, a living historical archive, an undeniable force for profound social and personal change. If, as we discussed, listening acutely can open up other sensory channels, reveal the artificiality of separating our senses, encourage us to engage more holistically, then
Then this brings us to a crucial final thought, perhaps. What new forms of solidarity, what deeper understandings, what truly transformative social movements might emerge if we applied this same deep listening, this profound embodied engagement to all forms of cultural expression around us, especially those that defy easy categorization or challenge those official narratives in our increasingly interconnected and complex world.
something to mull over until our next deep dive.